The ancient redwood forests of Northern California are renowned for their profound silence, their blanket-like density, and their almost supernatural ability to erase any trace of human presence. In September of 2008, 16-year-old Emily Hayes vanished without a trace. She was last seen on a hiking path near Whisper Creek, and only a shattered smartphone was recovered. The search for Emily lasted for grueling weeks, involving countless volunteers and canine teams, but the trail abruptly went cold. The case was regretfully classified as an accidental disappearance, leaving her family and the community in a painful limbo. 12 long years passed, stretching into an agonizing silence, before the forest, in its own enigmatic way, returned with a chilling answer. That answer was waiting inside an old, rusty chest freezer, half buried next to a dilapidated, abandoned cabin deep within the woods. It was with this grim discovery that a new investigation dramatically began, reigniting a cold case and irrevocably shattering the small town's perception of its own safety and innocence, revealing a darker truth beneath the surface. Northern California, September 2008. On a mild autumn morning, 16-year-old Emily Hayes left her home on the quiet outskirts of Willow Creek, Humboldt County, for what would tragically be the very last time. Her neighbors were accustomed to seeing the girl with a sketchbook always clutched in her hand, as art had been her fervent passion since early childhood. She meticulously sketched everything from the majestic redwood canopies to the intricate details of weathered cabin porches, capturing the beauty of her surroundings. That summer, the Hayes family experienced considerable tension. Her parents adamantly insisted that Emily attend a practical community college in Eureka after high school, urging her to secure a stable career. Emily, however, dreamed fervently of pursuing art, longing to study fine arts or illustration at a prestigious academy in San Francisco. On the morning of September 15th, the argument flared up once more, with her father sternly reminding her of application deadlines and her mother gently urging her to be realistic about her future. Emily, in a moment of teenage frustration, slammed her bedroom door with an echoing thud, exclaiming, "I'm going to draw. Just leave me alone for once." At 10:35 a.m., she messaged in a group chat with her closest friends, heading to the old logging trail near Whisper Creek. The light there will be perfect today. A few minutes later, one of her neighbors observed her with a small backpack and her precious art supplies, heading directly toward the forest edge. This was the last confirmed sighting of Emily, marking the moment she stepped into the unknown. Around 11:15 a.m., Emily briefly called her best friend, Sarah Chun. The conversation lasted barely a minute, but it left the most perplexing and mysterious detail in the entire case. In the background, a short, joyful exclamation could clearly be heard, something like a cheerful shout. "Hey, wait up. Where are you going?" Emily then chuckled softly and abruptly ended the call. Sarah later claimed that Emily had definitely seen someone she recognized and was hurrying to meet them. But precisely who that person was remained utterly unknown to anyone. After that brief, puzzling exchange, all traces of Emily mysteriously disappeared. By 2:30 p.m., heavy storm clouds ominously gathered over the forest, casting a pall over the landscape. A torrential rain began to fall, which persisted relentlessly until late evening, making any potential tracking efforts extremely difficult. When Emily did not return home by 9 p.m., her parents initially assumed she was simply waiting out the severe weather in a nearby shelter, a common occurrence in the rugged wilderness. However, as hours passed without her return, their worry escalated. Around 11 p.m., her increasingly distraught mother finally made the urgent call to the sheriff's department. The officer on duty meticulously recorded the missing person's message, noting the details with professional calm. 16-year-old Emily Hayes has not returned from a walk. She was last seen heading toward the old logging trail. Her parents meticulously described her clothing: faded denim shorts, a black graphic t-shirt, a light hooded sweatshirt, and worn sneakers, along with her sketchbook, small backpack, and smartphone. The storm eventually subsided, but their daughter did not appear, intensifying their fear. Around 11 p.m., the mother called the sheriff's department again. The officer on duty logged the missing persons report and immediately passed it on to Detective Miller, a seasoned investigator. In her official report, Miller wrote, 16-year-old female last seen on old logging road near Far, Whisper Creek. Circumstances of disappearance are unclear. Immediate response required, and so began a harrowing story that for many years would become one of Northern California's most baffling and tragic cold cases. On the morning of September 16, 2008, a large-scale search operation was launched in Humboldt County, mobilizing significant resources. More than 50 dedicated volunteers, several highly trained canine search teams, and a helicopter crew equipped with a thermal camera participated in the extensive effort. The specific area of the old logging trail where Emily Hayes was believed to be headed was notoriously difficult terrain. Dense undergrowth, trails completely washed out after the severe rainstorm, and countless misleading branches leading deep into the steep, treacherous mountain slopes. The search dogs, deployed directly from the Hayes family home, confidently picked up Emily's scent and led the search party to a narrow dirt road leading directly to Whisper Creek. However, after only a few hundred meters, the scent trail abruptly stopped. The highly trained animals became disoriented, circling one way and then sharply turning another, indicating a complete loss of the trail. It was as if Emily's presence had simply vanished into thin air, leaving investigators and searchers utterly baffled. This perplexing loss of scent seemed profoundly strange to Detective Miller. She noted in her field notebook, "Dogs losing direction. Appears something has broken the scent chain." The following day, the search intensified from the air. The helicopter meticulously flew around the creek's vicinity, desperately attempting to capture any heat signatures among the dense thickets, but the thermal camera revealed nothing except local wildlife and a few remote hikers' tents, offering no clues to Emily's whereabouts. Meanwhile, one of the ground search teams discovered a damaged smartphone near the bed of Whisper Creek. It lay half submerged in the thick mud, its screen severely cracked and the case deeply scratched. Experts later determined that the device had been broken by impact, as if it had been forcefully dropped or violently knocked from someone's hand. This was the first and only tangible piece of material evidence recovered, providing a glimmer of hope amidst the despair. The third day of searching yielded no further results. The tireless volunteers combed ravine after ravine, thoroughly checked abandoned hunting shelters, and ventured down to the roaring waterfalls, covering every conceivable area. Detective Miller personally walked the old logging road where Emily's trail was last confirmed. She noticed distinct tire tracks on the damp earth. The tread pattern was unique, similar to that of older pickup trucks or vintage Jeeps, suggesting a potential vehicle connection. But this clue, unfortunately, turned out to be less helpful than initially hoped. The expansive forest was a common thoroughfare for vehicles belonging to hunters, fishermen, and local foresters, making the tire tracks too common to be conclusive. A week dragged by, marked by growing desperation. Every single day, new sectors were meticulously combed, but not a single item belonging to the girl was found. No backpack, no sketchbook, no distinctive clothing. Investigators also failed to locate any witnesses who had seen Emily after 11 a.m. that fateful day, leaving them with limited options. Only a broken phone and the fragmented phone conversation with Sarah remained in the hands of the investigators, offering scant information. Detective Miller felt a gnawing suspicion that something didn't quite add up. She recalled Emily's words on the phone, "Hey, wait, where are you going?" and realized that behind this simple phrase was an encounter that no one knew about, hinting at a hidden interaction. In her official report, she emphatically stressed, "The version of accidental loss does not adequately explain the exclamation on the phone, or the perplexing absence of footprints after the creak. But the official position of the department leadership was different, favoring the accidental disappearance theory. A month passed, and the extensive search efforts were gradually scaled back. The weary volunteers dispersed, and the K-9 handlers returned to other duties as hope dwindled. At a press conference on October 15th, the county sheriff announced, "All available efforts have been exhausted. The probable cause is an accident. The girl likely got lost, perhaps fell into the swift creek, and her body was carried away by the strong current." The case was officially reclassified as cold, a devastating blow to the family. For the Hayes family, this version sounded like a devastating verdict without a body. They continued to keep a framed photo of Emily with her sketchbook on the living room table, a constant reminder of their missing daughter. But their faith in the official findings slowly but surely melted away. And Detective Miller, left with her meticulously filled notebook and a few blurry photos of the damaged smartphone, was absolutely certain that the forest concealed far more than it seemed, sensing a deliberate act rather than an accident. The forest trap had closed. No tangible evidence, no eyewitnesses, just the chilling feeling that someone had deliberately severed every single thread, orchestrating a perfect disappearance. The summer of 2020 was unusually hot, even for Northern California, and the heat seemed to intensify the long-held mystery. On July 20th, a group of high school students from the nearby town of Red Bluff embarked on a 3-day bicycle trip along an old, disused logging road, venturing deep into the vast wilderness. The 5 teenagers, 3 girls and 2 boys, were heading deep into the Cascade Mountains, hoping to spend the night near Whisper Creek, unaware of the grim discovery awaiting them. Around 3 p.m., they veered off the main road and stumbled upon a secluded, abandoned cabin with a severely cracked roof. The decaying building stood eerily among dense blackberry bush and looked as if it hadn't been entered in decades. Nearby, half buried in the overgrown grass, an old 1970s chest freezer sat darkened and massive, with peeling enamel, its rusted doors glistening strangely in the dappled sunlight. At first, the kids joked about it, a field freezer, or someone's secret beer stash, dismissing it as an oddity. But one of the boys ventured closer and pulled the handle. The door did not budge, hinting at its sealed state. Only after several determined attempts did they notice that the seam along the edge of the freezer door was completely welded shut with thick metal, making it look unnatural and menacing. Curiosity, overriding caution, took hold. The 2 boys used a sturdy branch to pry at the edge, trying to loosen the door even a fraction. The metal groaned and cracked in one corner, and an incredibly pungent, rotting smell immediately escaped into the humid air, sickening them. The teenagers recoiled in horror, screaming. The girls screamed, demanding they stop as the foul odor filled the air. The boys froze, a terrible realization dawning on them. There could be something far worse than mere garbage inside. Their playful curiosity had turned into genuine fear, understanding the gravity of their find. At 4 p.m., one of the boys urgently called his father, provided the precise coordinates of their location, and implored him to contact the police immediately, conveying the urgency of their discovery. Less than an hour later, a patrolman from the Humboldt County Sheriff's Department arrived at the scene. The chest freezer was instantly cordoned off with bright yellow tape, and the shaken teenagers were respectfully sent away, their role complete. By 6 p.m., a team of forensic experts arrived at the remote cabin, bringing specialized equipment. Rescuers used specialized tools to carefully cut through the thick weld around the perimeter of the freezer door, a painstaking process. When the heavy metal door finally came off with a chilling clang, even the experienced officers could not suppress their horrified reactions, a testament to the gruesome sight. Inside was a human skeleton. The bones were locked in an unnatural fetal position, indicating a struggle or forced placement, and the skeletal hands were still clutching an object It was immediately recognized as a well-worn sketchbook, a poignant detail. The tattered remains of shorts and a t-shirt still clung to the bones, giving a faint outline of who she once was. In the back pocket of the denim shorts, a leather wallet was found. Inside was an identification card in the name of Emily Hayes, the 16-year-old girl who had disappeared 12 years ago. The police meticulously recorded every single detail, leaving no stone unturned in their investigation. The sketchbook was carefully removed along with its surprisingly intact pages, which had miraculously survived the long years. The chest freezer was later transported to the base for a full in-depth examination. The news spread through the small town like wildfire within hours, shocking everyone. For most of the residents, Emily's name was already a local legend, a tragic part of the old forest's mysterious lore, a story whispered in hushed tones. And now, this forgotten mystery suddenly came roaring back to life, forcing the community to confront a new, unimaginable fear that was far more sinister than a simple accident. For 12 agonizing years, the girl had not merely been missing. She had been walled up alive in an iron box, left to die a slow, agonizing death alone, a cruel and unimaginable fate. Detective Martha Miller, who had tirelessly worked on Emily's initial disappearance case back in 2008, received the call at 7 p.m. She paused for a few seconds, holding the phone, her hand trembling slightly, the weight of the past suddenly crashing down on her. The name she had read over and over again in the cold, dusty file suddenly vibrated with terrifying new life, bringing old memories to the surface. The discovery in the old chest freezer was an undeniable turning point, a revelation that changed everything. The story, which had been almost completely forgotten, was now revealed with renewed, horrifying vigor, demanding answers. There would be intensive examinations, exhaustive interrogations, and burning questions that had haunted them from the very beginning. Who was standing next to Emily in the forest 12 years ago? And whose hand so cruelly welded the door of that deadly trap shut? The discovery of the chest freezer containing Emily Hayes' skeletal remains sent shockwaves throughout Humboldt County, igniting outrage and fear. The very next day, July 21, 2020, the grisly discovery was transported to the Sacramento Forensic Laboratory for extensive analysis. Experts worked with extreme caution, meticulously documenting every single detail of the macabre find. The skeletal bones were remarkably well preserved due to the sealed tightness of the freezer, which created an unusual protective environment. The narrow metal space had maintained a consistent humidity, effectively preventing animals or insects from getting inside and further damaging the remains. Medical examiner Dr. Eleanor Vance wrote in her preliminary report, "The cause of death is a combination of severe dehydration and suffocation. Signs indicate that the juvenile remained alive for some time after being interred. Clear ligature marks from a coarse rope were found on the neck vertebrae and wrist bones. This unequivocally confirmed it. Emily was first tied up, then purposefully placed inside, revealing a deliberate and violent act. Particular attention was paid to the sketchbook that the skeleton was clutching, a detail that held immense investigative potential. The cover was damaged, but the inner pages remarkably survived the long years, preserving crucial evidence. After meticulously recovering the data, technicians found more than 36 sketches and notes created on the day of her disappearance. The first few pages were typical of the young artist, intricate drawings of trees, moss, and the shimmering glare of a forest stream, showcasing her talent. But the last series of pages changed the entire course of the investigation, providing the breakthrough they desperately needed. The penultimate sketch depicted a blurred fragment of the forest path and the faint shadow of another person, hinting at an unknown presence. And the final sketch was the key. It showed a partial drawing of a vintage truck with a distinctive grille, a unique metal emblem, and most crucially, a hand in a sturdy work glove stretched out directly toward the artist, as if reaching for her or her art. Detective Martha Miller, who had led the initial search 12 years ago, received this chilling image on her desk. She was due to retire in a few months, but now this resurrected case consumed her entirely, pulling her back into the investigation she thought was long over. "We have a witness who left the evidence with his own hands," she told her colleagues, her voice tight with suppressed emotion as she flipped through the photo printouts of the sketches, feeling the weight of the revelation. The experts also noted that the chest freezer could not have been left near the abandoned cabin by accident. It had been purposefully dragged along the ground, with clear drag marks still preserved in the soil beneath a thick layer of moss, indicating a deliberate effort to conceal it. A few meters away, they discovered rusty wire remnants and pieces of electrical tape that were likely used to temporarily secure the door before it was permanently welded shut, adding to the evidence of premeditation. This came as a profound shock to the Willow Creek community as the truth unfolded. For years, Emily's name had been part of the local folklore, the missing girl from Whisper Creek. Now, the legend had received a terrifying confirmation. She was not taken by nature. She was bricked up alive, a horrifying reality. On the evening of July 23rd, Detective Miller officially reopened the case of the disappearance of Emily Hayes, the dusty dossier now front and center on her desk. At the center of this dossier was a new, undeniable piece of evidence, a drawing with a work glove that, after 12 years of haunting silence, reached out from the past, demanding an answer, finally offering a path to justice. After 12 years of agonizing silence, Detective Martha Miller began her renewed investigation with the very fragment that had haunted her since day one. Emily's brief, interrupted phone call to her best friend Sarah, that joyful shout in the background. "Hey, wait, where are you going?" And then the connection was suddenly cut off, a crucial detail now seen in a new, sinister light. At the time, in September 2008, it had sounded like an accidental occurrence, a simple phone glitch. Now, after the chest freezer was found, it became a crucial clue, a clear indication of a struggle or an unexpected encounter. Someone had definitely been there with the girl, contradicting the earlier assumption of her being alone. Miller made a comprehensive list of all of Emily's friends she had spent time with in high school. They were all adults now, some having moved away, some having started families, their lives having moved on. All of them readily agreed to be interviewed again, willing to revisit the painful memories. The detective meticulously recounted the events of that fateful day, forcing everyone to relive the emotional turmoil of September 2008, searching for any forgotten detail. First, she spoke to Sarah Chun. Sarah was a 16-year-old high school student back then. Now she was a 28-year-old successful architect in San Francisco, known for her sharp intellect and cold professionalism. Her alibi from 12 years ago looked shaky. Sarah claimed that after the call, she went for a drive around the city with a girl, but only her own words could confirm this. The girl she had been dating had since moved abroad and was no longer in contact, making verification difficult. Miller listened carefully as Sarah described their last conversation. "I remember that cry," Sarah explained, her voice distant and tinged with lingering sadness. It was sincere, like Emily had seen someone she'd known for a long time. It didn't sound like anxiety. However, Sarah's own behavior during high school raised doubts in Miller's mind. At school, she was fiercely competitive with Emily, and teachers had noted that Sarah seemed jealous of Emily's prodigious talent as an artist, hinting at underlying tensions. Several former classmates confirmed that there had been underlying conflicts between the girls. Emily consistently won awards at local art competitions, while Sarah often remained in her shadow, fueling resentment. Now, Sarah was successful in her finance career, but in the memories of many, she remained the one who struggled to accept someone else's success, a potential motive. Second on the list was a local recluse whom everyone simply called Old Man Hemlock. In reality, he was in his early 60s and lived in an old, dilapidated trailer on the deep outskirts of the forest, isolated from the community. Neighbors described him as a man of unsociable character, always armed and deeply suspicious of anyone who ventured near his land, making him a potential, albeit reclusive, suspect. Back in 2008, Miller had noticed his old Ford F-150 pickup truck, which fit the general description of the vehicle that could be in the drawing from the sketchbook. But there was no direct evidence at the time to connect him to Emily's disappearance. Old Man Hemlock claimed he was deer hunting that day. His story was not confirmed by anyone, but it was also impossible to definitively deny it. Now, it was impossible to resolve the matter conclusively, as Old Man Hemlock had passed away. 2 years ago, he had died of a heart attack, and any possible evidence or testimony went with him, closing off that avenue of investigation. His trailer was eventually demolished, and his property sold off. The only things left were the lingering memories of his neighbors about his strange behavior and his reputation as a man not to be trusted. Miller carefully rechecked all the testimonies. Emily's friends, one by one, rejected the idea that they could have been around that day, offering plausible alibis. They all adamantly claimed that they had no chance to meet her in the woods, but the phrase, "Hey, wait," hung in the air like an unsettling echo reverberating from the past, still demanding an explanation. The detective recorded the crucial details. Sarah had a potential motive, envy, and old conflicts. And Old Man Hemlock had the opportunity. He lived near the forest and drove a suspicious pickup truck. One of them could have been the shadowy figure in Emily's last sketch. But would these subtle hints be enough to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? Each new page in the reopened case file opened up even more questions than answers. If Sarah was guilty, why had she been behaving impeccably and building a successful career all these years without any suspicion? If Old Man Hemlock was guilty, why was there no trace of him or his truck near the freezer, suggesting he might not be the primary perpetrator? And most importantly, was there a third person involved, someone who was still completely in the dark, an unknown accomplice or the true killer? Miller knew one thing with absolute certainty. The true story was just beginning to unfold, and the truth would be far more complex than anticipated. The past was coming vividly to life, and anyone who had stood on that trail near Whisper Creek 12 years ago could now be under intense suspicion, forcing a re-evaluation of everyone involved. August 2020, a dedicated team of experts was meticulously working on the last sketch from Emily Hayes' sketchbook in the California State Police Crime Lab. The image was somewhat blurry due to its age and nature, but modern processing algorithms made it possible to extract far more detail than anyone had expected. The enlarged fragment clearly showed the distinctive shape of a radiator grille. The vehicle belonged to the Ford F-Series of the early 2000s, specifically an F-150. It was a relatively rare model for the area, as most of these older pickups had long since been decommissioned or replaced. Only a few dozens of vehicles of this specific type were still registered in the county database, and most of their owners were already known to the police, narrowing down the search. The second crucial discovery was the work glove depicted in the sketch. A rectangular patch with an inscription was clearly visible on its wrist. When the image was further processed and several sophisticated filters were applied, a familiar symbol became undeniably visible: the Redwood National Park Service patch. It was standard issue equipment for employees and dedicated volunteers who assisted with the ranger units in the region. Detective Martha Miller immediately compiled a comprehensive list of everyone who had participated in the search for Emily 12 years ago, meticulously cross-referencing names and affiliations. The name that prominently popped up among the first few entries, a name she knew well, made her freeze in stunned disbelief, sending a chill down her spine. Robert Bob Caldwell. Caldwell was well known in Willow Creek as an utterly reliable man, a pillar of the community. A former Park Service employee, he remained highly active after retirement. consistently helping with search operations and diligently organizing volunteers, earning him respect. Back in September 2008, he had spent almost the entire week tirelessly combing the forest areas near the creek personally, seemingly dedicated to finding Emily. For the townspeople, he was nothing short of a local hero, a kind and selfless individual. Emily was like a daughter to me, he had told reporters, his voice thick with emotion, after the search was finally completed. This poignant phrase was quoted in all the local newspapers, solidifying his image as a grieving father figure. In those days, Caldwell seemed to be the very personification of selfless care and unwavering devotion, an image now crumbling under the weight of new evidence. Miller meticulously looked through old photos from the archive. In one of them, taken during the intense search operation, Bob Caldwell stood next to a group of weary volunteers, and he was unmistakably wearing the same type of sturdy work gloves with the Park Service patch on his hands, a direct link to the sketch. The official report now stated, identified early 2000s Ford F-150 vehicle and glove with Redwood National Park Service patch. Both details match the profile of Robert Caldwell, a volunteer who was actively involved in the search in 2008. It was a staggering breakthrough, confirming a terrifying suspicion. For the very first time in 12 years, the investigation had not only a hypothesis, but also a specific, undeniable name. But at the same time, this name was profoundly shocking, shaking the foundations of the community's trust. Caldwell was universally trusted and considered the moral fiber of the community, a man beyond reproach. Everyone remembered how he had carried posters with Emily's photo on his shoulders and passionately urged people to join the search, appearing genuinely heartbroken. The longer Miller studied the accumulating materials, the more obvious and disturbing it became. Someone who had shouted for help, the loudest, could himself have become a torturer. A new, chilling note appeared in her notebook. Caldwell is the main focus, but the detail in the sketch itself remained eerily potent. The gloved hand stretched out to the lens now had a name that was still spoken with reverence and respect within the community. Detective Martha Miller began meticulously checking all the available data on Robert Caldwell, determined to uncover any hidden truths. His record looked absolutely impeccable, seemingly flawless. He was a former Park Service employee, a participant in numerous volunteer activities, and a respected member of the local community. But as soon as she started digging deeper, disturbing, almost imperceptible details began to surface in the archives, like cracks in a pristine facade. She found a record in the database of vehicle registration documents. Caldwell had indeed owned a Ford F-150 pickup truck made in 2002, the exact same model as the blurry image from Emily's sketchbook. He had sold the truck in 2010, 2 years after the girl's disappearance, a time frame that immediately raised red flags. The new owner lived in a neighboring county, and the pickup had long since been written off. But the timing of the sale looked far too suspicious to be coincidental. Miller traveled to Willow Creek to discreetly question Caldwell's neighbors, seeking any insights into his character. They remembered the time well. One elderly woman recalled, after the girl's disappearance, Bob walked around looking gloomy, but when asked, he always said that Emily was like a daughter to him. He almost cried in front of people, portraying him as a sympathetic figure. Another neighbor, conversely, remembered him as sharp-tongued and opinionated. He used to curse at the youth, saying that today's children are weak, that they will not make proper men and women, revealing a harsh, judgmental side. One more crucial detail came to light in these conversations. Bob's daughter, Maria Caldwell, was Emily's age. The girls went to the same school, but rarely spoke to each other. Unlike her father, Maria had a gentle disposition and was deeply fond of art. She loved to sketch with an old set of charcoals and dreamed of going to art college. Emily, who always carried a sketchbook and won awards for her work, was Maria's role model and, tragically, a constant source of conflict in the Caldwell family, a source of parental disapproval. The neighbors confirmed this. Bob did not approve of Maria's artistic hobby. He called drawing an unmanly occupation, believing that his daughter should follow in his footsteps, joining the park service and doing hard physical labor. Whenever Maria spent time with Emily, his father would stage furious scenes for her at home, making his disapproval clear. Miller wrote it down in her notebook. Motive: father's jealousy. Emily personified what Bob did not accept in his own daughter. Talented, sensitive, artistic. The horrific picture began to take shape for the community, a stark contrast to their previous understanding. Caldwell had appeared to be a savior who was desperately looking for a missing girl. But this carefully constructed image could conceal a deep, corrosive hatred for what Emily represented. The harsh man who had spent his life battling with his own daughter saw Emily as a powerful symbol of someone else's weakness that his twisted mind needed to be eradicated. In the archives of a local newspaper, Miller found an interview with Bob dated October 2008. He had said, "We cannot allow young people to forget what discipline is. Only the strong survive in the forest." For an ordinary reader, this had sounded like a powerful call to action, a common sentiment. For an experienced detective, it was a chilling, hidden confession of his own brutal beliefs, revealing his mindset. In the evenings, Miller would pore over her notes, the pieces of the puzzle slowly fitting together. The sketch from Emily's sketchbook appeared before her eyes, a hand in a work glove reaching out for the lens. Everything pointed to that hand belonging to Robert Caldwell, a man the community held up as a role model, making the betrayal even more profound. But the hardest part was coming to terms with the stark contrast between his public persona and the heinous act. For 12 years, he had referred to Emily as his daughter. He had carried her portraits at search rallies and told journalists about his great loss. At the same time, he was the one who could have locked the girl alive in that iron box. Miller knew there was a direct, unavoidable confrontation ahead, a moment of reckoning. She was preparing to meet the man who had been deceiving everyone for 12 long years, playing the role of a grieving philanthropist, a hypocrite who covered his heinous crime with a facade of charity, a master manipulator. At the end of August 2020, Detective Martha Miller drove to Robert Caldwell's house. His small cottage stood on the quiet outskirts of Willow Creek, not far from the same old logging road where Emily Hayes had disappeared 12 years earlier, a place steeped in tragic memories. Caldwell met her on the porch with a mug of coffee and his usual affable smile. "It's been a while since you've been here, Detective. What is it now?" he asked calmly, his demeanor betraying no hint of guilt. Miller replied that she wanted to clarify a few things about an old, reopened case. Caldwell eagerly invited her inside, projecting an image of openness and cooperation. Hunting trophies and yellowed photos from hiking trips adorned the living room walls, and certificates for volunteer work stood proudly on a shelf, creating an atmosphere meant to inspire trust. The atmosphere was designed to radiate respect and reliability, a carefully curated image. But that was precisely what was so deeply unsettling to Miller. Knowing what she now suspected, Miller began the conversation about September 2008, which volunteers had worked with him in the forest, which areas he had meticulously combed, whether he remembered the last time he had seen Emily. Caldwell answered confidently, even with a hint of irritation, saying how many times he could repeat the same story. Then she pulled a printed photograph of the sketch from the girl's sketchbook out of her folder, a blurry image of a hand in a work glove with a Redwood National Park Service patch. The smile on his face instantly vanished, replaced by a flicker of fear. "Did you have gloves like that, Bob?" Miller asked quietly, her voice steady and piercing. "Maybe once upon a time," he muttered, looking away, his gaze darting around the room, avoiding eye contact. "I don't remember." The detective insisted that he show her his old gear, pushing for a definitive answer. Caldwell, feigning indifference, reluctantly agreed and led her to the garage, his facade beginning to crack. Among the old tools in a dusty metal cabinet was a pair of worn work gloves. There was a clear, unmistakable patch on the wrist, the very same as in the sketch. At that moment, he broke down. He sank onto a stool right in the middle of the cluttered garage, clutched his head in his hands, and started talking. At first, he spoke in fragmented, choked sentences, then in more and more chilling detail, the truth finally spilling out. He said that he had met Emily purely by chance that day near Whisper Creek. The girl was walking with her sketchbook, as usual, and drawing something. This sight, he confessed, caused a sudden wave of uncontrollable rage within him. He saw the teenager as a dangerous, corrupting example for his daughter, Maria, an example of weakness and dreaminess that, in his twisted mind, needed to be pulled out by the roots. "I only wanted to scare her," he repeated, his voice barely a whisper, a hollow justification. "I tied her up to show her that she was powerless. But when I realized that I had already gone too far, I couldn't let her go. She would have told everything." And then Maria, double quotes then, consumed by fear of exposure, he decided to get rid of the girl. An old chest freezer near an abandoned cabin became a horrifyingly convenient solution for him. He dragged Emily inside, welded the door shut with brutal finality, and left, convinced that no one would ever find this makeshift grave, believing his secret was safe. The confession was meticulously recorded in a formal protocol. The next day, Caldwell was officially arrested for premeditated murder, bringing an end to the long search for answers. The news instantly spread like a devastating earthquake through the town, shocking and deeply upsetting everyone. The man who had been considered a hero for 12 years turned out to be a cruel, calculating torturer, a monstrous betrayal of trust. After learning the horrifying truth, Maria Caldwell cut all ties with her father, his actions unforgivable. For her, this blow was devastatingly double. Her faith in her hero father was utterly destroyed, replaced by revulsion. And at the same time, she lost the person who had inspired her own artistic dreams, Emily Hayes, a victim of her father's rage. The whole town gathered at Emily's funeral in early September, a solemn remembrance for a life tragically cut short. Her sketchbook was placed on her grave as a poignant symbol, a testament to her passion and talent. The girl had lived for art and had died clutching her art, a final, heartbreaking image. Martha Miller left the service a few months later and quietly retired, her mission finally complete. She knew that justice had come late, but it had come, and the redwood forests of Northern California remained green and majestic. But now their silence is different, forever marked by Emily's story. Emily's story isn't the only one buried in those woods. Subscribe, and I'll tell you the rest.